Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to get started in a couple of minutes. I just want to give people time to tune in. I'm probably going to do a couple of hangouts today. I'm going to at least do three now, three separate hangouts. And I'm doing it that way so that you don't have a whole bunch of subjects jumbled up into one video in a very long hangout, because I know that most people don't have time to sit around and watch a long hangout. So I'm going to divide this up. So I'm going to do at least three short hangouts now. And I may do one this evening, an open mic type of hangout. And there's one thing that I'm really interested in talking about, and that's that, the whole situation where you have these white women dressing up as black women. I may talk about that as well. I may do a separate hangout on that sometime this evening. But I just have a lot of ideas that are coming to me, and I just decided, well, I might as well just talk about these various ideas in separate hangouts. So I hope that y'all can roll with me. I'm off today, and I'm off for quite some time. I'm going to be off for the next couple of weeks. So I have some time to do these live streams. Shout out to Big Gang. Thanks for tuning in. So I'm going to share my screen so you all can see exactly what issue I'm going to be talking about. And I'm sure that by now most of you have heard about this. This has been all over YouTube, the situation involving this black security guard who was killed while trying to do his job, killed by police officers who should have been there to support that brother and help that brother apprehend the suspect. So I'm going to get started in a second. Shout out to Psycho. Shout out to everyone in the chat room. So let me share my screen, if you all can bear with me a second. So here's the story, and I would play the video, but I don't want to deal with any copyright issues for that reason. So for that reason, I'm not going to be playing the video and audio and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to deal with copyright issues and having to contest things and raise the issue of fair use and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to provide a link to this particular article right here in the description box so that you can watch the video for yourself. But it's about this tragic situation out of Robbins, Illinois. You had a shooting that took place inside of a bar, and the security guard by the name of Jemel Robertson proceeded to stop those people. He returned fire, and he actually apprehended one of the suspects. And this security guard is a 26-year-old African-American man. He captured one of the suspects and pinned him on the ground with his knee on their back, and he had a gun pointed to that person's back, telling them to don't move. And an officer responding to the scene shot and killed this brother, Robertson. And right before this officer killed him, you had a lot of people on the scene basically saying security guard, just letting him know that he's a security guard, that he's not one of the suspects. And despite that, the police officer proceeded to shoot and kill this brother. And one of the witnesses made this statement. He said everybody was screaming out security. He was a security guard, and still they did their job. They saw a black man with a gun and basically killed him. And unfortunately, too many of these police, their job is to harass black people. Their job is to kill black people. And that's what the police did here. So they shot and killed his brother. According to this article, the brother had a valid firearms owner identification. He had every right to stop those suspects. He had every right to have a firearm. But the police shot and killed this brother. And according to the report, this brother played musical instruments at various churches in the community. This brother wanted to be a police officer, and his brother has a 9-month-old son. So now that son is going to be without a father. You know, the baby's mother is not going to have any kind of support now because of this crime committed by the police. And he set up a GoFundMe page. His family has set up a GoFundMe page. I will include a link again to this article. And if you want to donate to that particular page, the link is in the article so that you can do so to support this brother and his family. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second and then just provide my commentary about this situation briefly. But before I do, I want to check in with y'all, see where you all are before I provide my commentary. Just bear with me 1 second. Shout out to Bonafide 1970. Shout out to you. Shout out to Alt Streets. Shout out to Kevin Drummond. Yeah, so let me just share my thoughts about this, man. You know, the police shot and killed this brother, despite the fact that you had people in the crowd saying that he's a security guard. You know, telling these officers that repeatedly, shouting that this brother is a security guard. But these police, like many police officers, they see a black man and they automatically assume that the black man is a criminal. They automatically assume that the black man is a suspect. Like in their minds, they can't possibly envision this black man as a security guard. And I don't know, like from reading the articles, whether or not they said he had a uniform on or anything like that. It's unclear from what I've read so far, whether or not he had a uniform on. And I think that, you know, obviously in these types of situations, I think that it's probably better for them to have the security guard in a uniform because, you know, often these police will assume that any black person is a criminal, especially a black man with a gun. And it's like some unwritten law in this country that is like illegal for black men to possess firearms. You know, they automatically assume that black men with firearms are criminals and they proceed to kill them. But like the NRA, you know, these groups that claim to be about firearms rights and all that kind of stuff, claim to be about enabling people to defend themselves. These same people, you don't hear a word from them when these types of killings take place. When black men are killed by the police, simply for having firearms, or even in a situation like this when a brother is trying to protect people. You don't hear these NRA people speaking out on this. You know, when mass shootings occur and things of that nature, the first thing the NRA says is that we need to have more guns. We need to have, you know, people armed at schools and all that kind of stuff. But when you have somebody that used his firearm to defend people, to literally save lives. In this situation, this brother is killed by the police, and I haven't heard a word from the NRA trying to defend this brother and his right to bear arms. Not a word. And this happens all the time. It's like a double standard. You know, when a black man has a gun, he's automatically viewed as dangerous. He's viewed as a criminal. And we've seen that. There's footage here on YouTube where you have, for instance, 2 people in 2 separate incidents walking around openly carrying firearms, and the police respond to them in completely different ways. When it comes to the white man, they want to talk to him, have a polite conversation with him about his firearm. But when it's a black man, the first thing that the police officers did is they pulled up on him and they pointed their weapons at him and they told him to get to the ground and all that kind of stuff. So they deal with black people and white people completely differently. If this had been a white security guard holding down a black man with a gun pointed at his back, they would have held that security guard as a hero. They would not have fired, they would not have killed that security guard if that security guard was white. Just like how these people defend that killer, the person who killed Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman. They defended him. They said he was in his right, he was defending himself and all this and that. The police, took forever to even arrest that guy. But when it comes to a black man, they arrive on the scene and they immediately assume that that black man is, the criminal. So they shoot and kill him and they ask questions later. And that's what we have here. And it's just a shame. Like, here you have somebody that tried to defend those people. He was defending people from actual criminals. Because of him, lives were saved. Because of him, at least one of those suspects was apprehended. But yet this is what happens to a black man when he stands up and he tries to protect people. He ends up being the victim. And I just think that this is a metaphor for the lack of appreciation that black men in society get, period. When black men, stand up and, they perform their duties to protect and all that kind of stuff, too often it goes unappreciated. Not only unappreciated by the society, and this is the ultimate form of a lack of appreciation, where they actually kill a black hero. You have situations, for instance, where, black men, for instance, sacrifice their lives for this country, go to war for this country, go abroad and fight in foreign lands for this country. And yet when they come back to this country, they still face discrimination. And we know that this has been the history in this country for a long time, with the going all the way back to the Civil War. Black people fought on the front lines during the Civil War. Black people fought every single major war in this country for this country. They fought in all the wars abroad for this country. They fought the Civil War, and even the war for independence, the Revolutionary War. The first person that died in that war was a black man. But despite all those sacrifices, black men and black people in general still face discrimination. And this is just another example of that kind of discrimination. I mean, they assumed that this brother was the criminal and they shot and killed him. I mean, another example of racial profiling. And, it's just a shame. And I know that it was chaotic at the scene. Like you arrive on the scene and there were reports of somebody shooting at this particular bar and all that kind of stuff. And you see somebody with a gun. But after all those people identified that brother as a security guard, at that point, reason and logic should have kicked in and they should have helped that brother arrest that suspect. But instead, they killed that brother. And, it just goes, it's just another example of being unappreciated, as I said, not only by the society, often it's our very own black women that don't appreciate black men who do stand up for not only their women, but for their community. I mean, you have people, for instance, in a situation where a man is standing up against a store owner that has attacked a black woman. You still have many black women continue to go to that business, despite the fact that that business owner was abusive toward a black woman. And then you even have in the worst case scenario where a woman was actually yelling at one of the boycotters, one of the black men that was organizing a boycott against that store. So it's just like an overall lack of appreciation. And you also see it here on YouTube where you have these women that talk about black men haven't done this, black men haven't done that, black men are not providers or protectors, despite all these examples of black men providing and protecting, despite all these examples of black men going to jail for black people. You still have people that don't appreciate the black man. And again, this is just another reminder. And it also raises the issue of the black police officer, like how, this is a young brother who was striving to become a police officer. He wanted to join the police force. And this is how he ends up killed by the very people that he wanted to join. I mean, it's just a disgrace, man. And it's like poetic type of tragedy that took place here. Like here you have a brother that wants to be a police officer and then he ends up being killed by the police officer. You know, and the thing is, like, often Black police officers are expendable. You know, they are often killed in these quote unquote friendly fire type of situations. You know, you have situations where white police officers arrive on a particular scene of a crime and they assume that the Black officer is one of the criminals and they end up killing the Black officer. We see this time and time again, but yet and still you have Black people that want to join these same police departments that commit these types of acts against Black people. And while I understand why they want to join, and in some ways, I think that we do need to have more Black police officers, but we need to go beyond just simply having Black police officers. We need to completely reform the nature of these police departments so incidents like this will not occur in the future. Yeah, so I mean, this brother was not a thug. You know, like that's the first thing they try to paint people as, like when there's one of these incidents that take place. This is a brother who was going to church, you know, a family man and all that kind of stuff. You know, somebody that played in the choir and all this and that. Literally almost like a choir boy ends up killed like this. And his family has brought a $1 million lawsuit against the police department. And I really hope that they prevail in this case. Because this is a grave injustice, man. And really the city, they should just settle this case because this is just wrong. I mean, here you have a man that was trying to actually save lives, ends up losing his life at the hands of the very people that are supposed to be protecting lives. So with that, I'm going to see what you all have to say about this, and then I'm going to close out. I want to thank the people for tuning in right now. Again, shout out to Big Game Orenthal, shout out to Psycho, shout out to Bonafide 1970, shout out to Alt Streets, shout out to Kevin Drummond, shout out to Living My Life Like It's Golden. So let's see. Kevin Drummond said, I want to see Oprah talk about this. Yeah, I mean, I think that this deserves more attention than it's receiving. Fortunately, you do have a lot of people here on YouTube talking about it. But I think that more people in the mainstream media should be covering this issue and just talking about this whole issue of quote unquote friendly fire. You know, because here he was like a para law enforcement type of figure, and then he ends up killed by law enforcement. So this is something that has to be talked about, man. Just like this, you know, this problem that happens so often where you have Black police officers killed by white police officers and just Black people in general killed by police, and just the difference in treatment that this society has towards white people that bear arms compared to Black people who bear arms. You know, when white people serve in this capacity, they're held as heroes and all that kind of stuff. But when it's a Black man, he's viewed as a criminal because our skin color in the minds of these races is like a badge of criminality. And then one issue that I really have to talk about on this is, you know, this issue of inner city violence. Like I can't address this without, you know, I can't do this video without addressing that issue. I mean, the mere fact that you had these thugs go up in this bar and shoot up the bar or whatever, that is, you know, obviously a huge problem, because if those people did not participate in that shooting, that brother would be alive today. You know, it's because of people like that, those thugs, you know, the people that plague our communities, you know, with violence, they are partly to blame for a lot of the problems that we have, because of what happens is they use those people to stereotype Black people as a collective. And, you know, because of that shooting, you know, they assumed, first of all, the police were drawn to the scene because of the shooting. So that on that basis alone, the shooting wouldn't even happen if they hadn't participated in it, had been involved in that shooting to begin with. The brother wouldn't have gotten shot by the police if it wasn't for those thugs that were there at that bar shooting it up to begin with. And then, the fact that these, suspects were black, that perpetuates this stereotype of black criminality and stuff like that. So it's very hard to like counter a lot of these negative stereotypes when you have a significant number of black people that participate in these crimes. And obviously, people should be judged as individuals, but what happens is, the larger society uses these examples to justify stereotypes against black people and generalizations against black people and, discriminatory policing practices against black people. So I just had to air that out, man. I mean, it's just very frustrating that you had this situation. So, yeah, so before I go, I'm just going to look at a couple of more comments. Again, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Yeah, so as Bonafide said, when white cops see us, no matter our profession, they go into racist attack mode. Unfortunately, that's true, man. Too often that happens. And Bonafide talked about how, this happens a lot with undercover black police officers. They end up getting shot by their fellow police officers. And Bonafide pointed out that white people who bear arms are seen as Second Amendment rights patriots, and black people who bear arms are seen as existential threats and potential menaces to society. Absolutely, that's how society works. It's like a double standard. But anyway, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.